You know, it's funny when you hear about these trade wars
Yeah.
and, all these tariffs flying around,
Right.
it all feels kind of like this big game of economic chicken.
Mm-hmm.
But when you actually look at the numbers,
Oh, exactly.
like right now, China is hitting some U.S. goods with what, an 84% tariff?
84%, that's right.
And then the U.S. is countering with, I think it's 104%?
104%. Yeah, it's getting pretty heated.
It really makes you stop and think.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what is actually still being traded
Right.
between these two economic giants?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into today.
Yeah, because despite all this back and forth,
Yeah?
China is still a massive buyer of American stuff.
Like here.
In 2023, they were the U.S.'s third largest export market,
Wow.
which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Snapping up something like $145 billion worth of goods.
145 billion.
That's got to be supporting a ton of jobs back here.
Oh, absolutely. To put it in perspective.
Yeah.
Those exports in 2022 supported over 931,000 American jobs.
Oh.
So we're talking about a whole lot of livelihoods.
Yeah, and it's not just some abstract number.
No, not at all.
That's real people's paychecks.
It's families, it's communities.
And a big chunk of those jobs are in agriculture and livestock.
Right, which we'll get into a bit more as we go.
Okay, so let's break down that $145 billion.
Right, let's do it.
What are the top one or two things
Okay.
that make up the bulk of what we send over there?
In 2023, the two biggest categories were oilseeds and grains,
Okay.
clocking in at about $18.5 billion.
Oilseeds and grains, so like what falls under that?
Think soybeans, wheat, and corn.
So basically like the stuff that ends up in a lot of our food.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of staple crops.
Right, and the second biggest export category.
Right. The second one was oil and gas,
Oil and gas makes sense.
coming in at $17.6 billion.
So right off the bat, we're seeing a lot of like
Yeah.
raw materials and
You
energy.
got agriculture and energy, big players.
It's interesting, though. I was looking at the numbers for oilseeds and grains, and it actually dropped by like $7 billion
Oh, wow.
from 2022 to 2023,
That's a big dip.
which I guess kind of shows how volatile things can be
Oh,
with
absolutely.
these trade relationships.
Extremely sensitive.
You know, one minute it's booming, the next minute it's...
Exactly. And the U.S.-China Business Council actually warned
Oh, yeah.
that if the U.S. keeps adding more tariffs,
Right.
China could retaliate and hit back even harder.
Yeah.
And then American farmers,
Yeah.
they're the ones who would really feel it.
Right. They're the ones on the front lines when these trade wars heat up.
Absolutely on the front line.
Okay, so oil and gas, that was the second biggest export.
Right. $17.6 billion worth.
Where is all that coming from in the U.S.?
You might be surprised to hear this,
Okay.
but the vast majority, like 96% of those oil and gas shipments come from just two states,
2 states. Wow.
Texas and Louisiana.
So if there are any big shifts in that trade,
Right.
those 2 states would definitely feel it.
Oh, yeah. They'd be the first to feel the impact, for
Yeah.
sure.
All right, so we've got agriculture and energy.
The big two.
What else makes up that huge $145 billion total?
Oh, there's a whole lot more.
Because there's a lot of ground to cover there.
Absolutely. A huge variety of goods.
Okay, so what are some of the other big categories?
Well, after those first two, we see a real mix.
Yeah.
There's this big category just called other,
Other, okay.
which is actually pretty substantial. It comes in at $15.9 billion.
Wow, other $15.9 billion.
Yeah, it's a catch-all.
It's got to be everything but the kitchen sink.
Right. It probably includes all kinds of manufactured goods
Yeah.
that aren't specifically broken out elsewhere.
So like just a whole bunch of different stuff lumped together.
Exactly. It could be specialized industrial components,
Okay.
certain consumer electronics, things like that.
Okay, so beyond that mysterious other category.
Right. Beyond other,
What are we looking at?
pharmaceuticals and medicines are a big export
Makes sense.
at $11.3 billion.
So China's relying on the U.S. for a lot of healthcare products.
It seems, so it really shows the strength of our pharmaceutical industry.
And that's a really important sector.
Absolutely.
Because it's not just about like dollars and cents.
It's people's health.
It's about people's health and well-being.
Their well-being, exactly.
Okay, so after pharmaceuticals, what else is high up on the list?
Then we get into some key technology and manufacturing areas.
Okay.
Semiconductors and components.
Semiconductors, those are huge right now.
Oh, they're essential.
They're in everything.
Everything, your phone, your car.
Everything.
They're crucial. And those came in at $6.8 billion.
That's $6.8 billion for semiconductors.
Yep. And right alongside that also at $6.8 billion.
Right.
We have aerospace products and parts.
So our tech and aviation industries are really tied in with China.
Oh, very much so.
I mean, semiconductors are in the news all the time.
Constantly.
They're such a big part of the global economy now.
You really are.
And aerospace, that's another really high-value industry.
Oh, yeah.
Were there any other categories that kind of came in around that level?
Several others hovered around that $6 to $7 billion range.
Okay.
Things like navigational and measurement instruments.
What exactly are those?
Think sophisticated equipment
Okay.
used in manufacturing, surveying all sorts of industries.
Interesting.
It shows China's need for precision tools.
Right. They're really building up their industrial capacity.
Absolutely.
Okay. What else?
Then you've got basic chemicals at $6.5 billion.
Basic chemicals. That's interesting.
Yeah, these are like the building blocks
Okay.
for a huge range of manufacturing.
So it really shows how intertwined our industries are.
Incredibly intertwined.
And then there's motor vehicles.
Yes, motor vehicles.
At $6.1 billion.
Which is interesting.
Because I thought China made most of their own cars now.
They do produce a lot.
But there's still this demand for American-made vehicles.
It is. It's fascinating.
Especially with those tariffs we talked about.
Right.
Do you think that would make them less competitive?
You would think so.
But I guess there's still a market for them.
It could be a desire for specific American models.
Yeah. Could be brand loyalty.
Or brands that aren't easily available there.
Or maybe it's like existing contracts.
Could it be long-term agreements?
It would be interesting to see exactly what kinds of cars they're importing.
Oh, definitely.
But it just shows that even everyday stuff like cars plays a role in this trade relationship.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've hit the big number.
The big hitters.
What else are we sending over to China?
Oh, there's a lot more further down the list.
Is there anything that would surprise people?
Well, let's see. Continuing down, we have a mix of industrial and consumer goods.
Okay.
We're talking things like resins and synthetic fibers.
Okay.
Used in all sorts of manufacturing at $5.5 billion.
All right.
Industrial machinery at $5 billion.
Okay.
And then this one might surprise you.
All right. What is it?
Meat products at $4.5 billion.
Meat products, really?
Yep. So China's a big consumer of American agriculture.
I wouldn't have thought of that as a major export.
It's surprising, but it really highlights how much they need.
They're a huge market.
A massive market with huge consumption needs.
Okay, so meat products, what else?
We also see medical equipment and supplies.
Makes sense.
At $3.6 billion general purpose machinery at $2.6 billion.
Okay.
And then back to agriculture with miscellaneous crops at $2.4 billion.
Miscellaneous crops. Okay.
And even scrap products make the list at $2.4 billion.
Scrap products.
Yep. They use it as raw materials for their manufacturing.
So we're sending them our junk.
Basically. But one country's trash is another's treasure.
I guess so. It's really amazing.
It is.
How diverse this trading relationship is.
Oh, incredibly diverse.
Everything from, like you said, high-tech components down to raw materials.
And even scrap, yeah.
So the list just keeps going.
It does.
What else is on there?
Well, we've got pulp and paperboard mill products.
Okay.
Miscellaneous manufactured commodities.
Right.
Computer equipment. Non-ferrous metal products.
So like metals that aren't iron?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Things like aluminum, copper.
Interesting.
Then there's motor vehicle parts, electrical equipment, and components.
So it's like a whole supply chain of stuff.
It really is a whole ecosystem.
All right, keep going. I'm ready for more.
We've got plastic products.
Okay.
Engines and turbines, electrical equipment.
Wow.
Even things like soaps, cleaning agents, and toiletries.
So the stuff we use every day in our bathrooms.
Exactly. Even that is being exported.
It's pretty wild.
It is, and we're sending over fruits and tree nuts, too.
From the nuts and bolts to the soap we use.
Literally.
It's really comprehensive.
It is, and it really highlights
Yeah.
how deeply connected the U.S. and Chinese economies have become.
Yeah, despite all the political stuff, this trade is still going strong.
Oh, yeah. A significant amount of trade continues.
Now, the report also broke down which U.S. states are doing the most exporting to China.
Right.
And Texas was at the top.
Not surprising.
Which I guess isn't that shocking.
Yeah, with their huge energy sector.
So Texas was #1. Who else is up there?
Okay, so in 2023, Texas led the way with $25.7 billion worth of goods.
$25.7 billion.
Yeah, their dominance in oil and gas exports definitely plays a big role.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Then in second place, we have California.
California.
With $16.4 billion.
So they've got a strong presence in both tech and agriculture.
Exactly, both big sectors.
And then third place?
Third place was Louisiana.
Louisiana.
At $6.5 billion.
So more energy exports, I'm guessing?
Right, there's significant energy infrastructure.
Makes sense.
Similar to Texas.
And it's interesting to see South Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
Rounding out the top 10 with $3.9 billion.
Interesting, right.
So it shows that this trade isn't just concentrated in a few states on the coast.
Not at all.
It's spread out across the country.
It's got a broader reach.
So to sum it all up,
All right, let's
we're sending a ton of agricultural products to China.
Huge amounts.
A massive amount of oil and gas.
Right.
And then this really broad mix of manufactured goods.
Right, a really wide array.
From medicines and computer chips to cars and even everyday stuff like soap.
It's pretty remarkable.
It is. And all of this is supporting a lot of jobs here in the U.S.
Oh, absolutely. It's a significant chunk of economic activity.
But with all these trade tensions and the tariffs going back and forth, it feels like things could get really shaky.
Well, they could change very quickly.
Yeah, and that could have a real impact on those jobs.
On the industries and the people who rely on them.
It's really something to think about.
It is.
Because when you see just how much we're still trading,
the sheer volume,
it makes you wonder.
Yeah.
What happens if these trade dynamics keep shifting?
Right.
What could be the long-term consequences for both the U.S. and the Chinese economies?
That's the big question.
And it's not just about the big headline numbers.
No, it's about the interconnectedness.
It's about all the individual pieces that make up that bigger picture.
Right. It's a complex web of supply chains and relationships.
And if there are big changes, we'll be dealing with the ripple effects for a while.
Absolutely. There will be consequences for sure.
So it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Oh, for sure. We'll have to see how it all plays out.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today.
It was great chatting.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
Sounds good.